Well, good evening, life groups. This is the first of two videos that I'm going to do for you this evening related to the sermon on Sunday. Most of you will know that we're doing a sermon series at the moment called Practising the Presence of God, which is about the age-old spiritual disciplines, which I believe are grace gifts for us right now. In a time where anxiety and stress and frustration and there's a lot of chaos and challenges going on, and we desperately need them. I would really encourage you to follow along to the sermon series. So if for some reason you haven't heard it, do go back and listen, because it's hard in these short videos to cover everything and we don't want you to misunderstand. I think particularly we don't want you to misunderstand that we walk in grace, that we've been saved by grace, and these disciplines that Jesus calls us to as his disciples to follow him are not ways of earning salvation. They're not ways of making ourselves into a sort of better, holier person. Jesus has saved us, he sanctifies us, but there are ways that now we have been freed from sin to know that freedom in our lives and to be witnesses for him. So the sermon on Sunday, I went over the biblical principles of Sabbath, which is the word that I said means, it's a Hebrew word Shabbat. It means to stop and trust God. I went over contemplative prayer, looking at the Shema, which is a listening prayer, how prayer can be about listening to God. And then I mentioned meditation, particularly meditation on Scripture, how we can use Scripture to focus. We can also meditate, of course, on creation and even ideas about God as well, and lots more could be said about that, but we'll focus a bit more on Scripture. Just want to mention a few tips, a few thoughts as we come to this whole area of spiritual disciplines. Tim spoke last week on silence and solitude and stillness, and now we're talking about Sabbath, prayer and meditation. How do we do that? Well, let's think about this in a few ways. I think the first thing to say is that screens, that smartphones, iPads, whatever it is, can be a real problem, can be a real distraction from having us come to God. And I would really recommend you find a way to manage them. If you've got a smartphone that you use, and they can be really helpful, they're a great gift, find a way to manage it. In his book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, John Mark Comer talks about making your smartphone into a dumb phone, so that it doesn't have the same chemical reactions with you and it create the same addiction that it does for most of us. Even without that, my phone doesn't have that many notifications. It's in black and white. I don't feel quite as compelled to look at it. I still generally have to put it out of the room if I want to spend time with God. So think about how you will deal with that for yourself, and if you have kids, what you're modelling to them as well. I think is an important part of being able to be still and alone with God is to be away from others and away from those distractions. Secondly, I've personally found that exercise, and this won't be for everyone, but exercise can be a really good way for me to also slow down. So when I can, a run, a bike ride or a walk can be a way to kind of slow down. So it's funny because my body's speeding up, but it allows my mind to slow down so I can come back. So if you find someone who finds it hard to stop or to begin your day with God, I would suggest, why don't you try that? It's not about breaking your 5k run record or anything like that. It's just about having a bit of time to be out and away from the distractions so you can come and focus on God. And the other thing is just about time of day. We don't want to be legalistic. You and I, as disciples of Jesus, have to work out ourselves how we spend time with him. But I think for most of us, beginning the day with God is really important. For most of us who have a stressful, distractible day, so whether that's because of your job, because of the demands on you from children or whatever it is, begin with God. Begin not being used for others, but by submitting yourself and your time to him. So good. But of course, you may find there are other times of the day you can do this, but for me, that's what I found is at the beginning of the day is just important. So I just want to give you guys, in this first video, I'm going to give you some questions. In the next video, I'm going to do some practice with you of these things. So questions about Sabbath, questions about prayer, and questions about meditation. These are not abstract questions. I want you to discuss them, and I'd recommend going into 2s or 3s, use your breakout rooms on Zoom or whatever. But try and be honest. There's no point doing this if we all feel like we have to project some kind of super spiritual life that we don't have. Let's just be honest with each other about where we're up to. If you're beginning in this, then great. There's a great way forwards for you. So for the questions about Sabbath is just really, do you currently take the time to stop and trust God, whether that is on a daily basis or on a 24 hours a week basis, or maybe a Saturday or Sunday or whatever works for you. What about a seasonal basis? Do you have a holiday or a retreat once a season? So daily, weekly and seasonally, do you stop and rest with God? The rule of life that I've given, you might want to share this, life group leaders, so that people can look at that. It's on our website and bulletin. And secondly, related to Sabbath, so do you currently do it? Would you like to? And what steps could you take to do this? So talk really practically about Sabbath. I want you to then talk really practically about prayer. Do you currently pray contemplatively? That means stopping, taking time to be still and to be quiet with God. And usually I think using the Jesus prayer or scripture to do that, something like that. If you don't yet, how might you begin or improve your praying contemplatively? And then finally, meditation. Again, talk honestly about meditation. Do you ever meditate on scripture? What have you found hard or easy about this? Could you plan to begin this and maybe even make yourself accountable to someone in your group? So really, I'm just asking you to talk really practically about Sabbath, prayer and meditation. Sabbath as a principle, not a rule. Prayer as a way of stopping, and meditation as a way of focusing on God. Have a good honest chat, take whatever time you need to do that, come back together as a group you might want to share, and then we're going to finish this evening with some practice of some of these things.